Hello, America. Welcome to Common Sense. I'm Wendy Bell. I hope you know that they are pushing us because they think we won't push back. That's what this insanity, this totally indefensible crazy town USA is really all about. For them to see how far they can get before we resist and fight the hell back, right? That's what this is, the masks were all about, right? The symbol of obedience. Think about this. They demonized cops after George Floyd. They kneecapped their funding. Remember all of this? Officers being pelted with rocks, having water dumped all over them. Where were we? Like, where was our outrage? And then they came for the kids, right? Trying to groom our sons and daughters, normalizing pedophilia, putting porn in school libraries, wacko activist teachers, and all crazy things trans. Where were we when they tackled Scott Smith and labeled him the threat? They've pushed us with science, with data, with fear, now with this alien invasion. So here is my question to you. When is enough enough? What is that final straw? These people cannot take what we are not willing to give up. After all, got a great panel today for you. They're all talk radio hosts, as I am, and they have their fingers on the pulse of this pushback. Ari Hoffman hosts the Ari Hoffman Show on Talk Radio 570 AM, KVI in Seattle. Stacy Washington hosts Stacy on the Right on Sirius XM Radio, and Barack Lurie hosts the Barack Lurie Show on AM 870 out of Los Angeles. Hey, Ari, how about we start with you? You know, the CDC pushing another booster, right? Even though they know it can cause myocarditis and like a zillion other issues. But now the CDC refuses to release data from the Vaccine Adverse Event Reporting database about how many people have been heart damaged by the jabs. Mind you, that list is a gross underestimation. We fund the CDC, Ari. How is no an acceptable answer here?
I think we should be asking, why does everybody think this thing is effective? We had Governor Jay Inslee from Washington test positive yet again. I don't know if that's the third or fourth time that has happened after being a guy who fired anybody who wouldn't get the jab here in Washington. We had Jill Biden test positive again. Number one, why is anybody testing for this thing? It's the flu with a 99.8% survivability. Why are they trying to lock us down again? Because you know the answer as well as I do. We're heading into 2024. We're heading into an election. They want to go back to mail-in balloting, and the only way they can do it, they found the secret sauce in 2020, is by doing this. That's why they're trying to make COVID a thing again.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you. I'm waiting for that like group of people to rise up and push back, and I'm just not seeing it. Stacy, child sex trafficking. I mean, can we not rise up against that? This is unconscionable. We've got to be awake and aware, and this is now bigger business than the drug trade. Remember Disney? They tried to put The Sound of Freedom on a shelf, but the movie got out there. It became a blockbuster, and they couldn't shut it down. Like, that to me is pushback. Do you think that works?
Of course it does. Nothing speaks louder than dollar bills, and especially in Hollywood, where they pride themselves on saying the movie cost $200 million to make, but it made, $700 million. So there's their money back and then some, and profitability, and also bigger payments for those actors in future films. But for this one, they really screwed the pooch, because had they let Sound of Freedom out when they had control of it, not only would they have made the money, but they also would have controlled the narrative back then, because it wasn't an issue. The southern border was essentially sealed by President Trump. Now that the border's wide open and children are being trafficked, over 100,000 children missing by the Department of Homeland Security, you're looking at Americans flocking to the theater, buying tickets for other people who can't afford to get in there themselves. It was a runaway train against Indiana Jones and Harrison Ford, one of the biggest names in the world for movies. So they really screwed the pooch on that one, but it was for the greater benefit of children and Americans at large.
Right on, and I hope people are beginning to wake up on this, because it's one of those things you don't want to believe is really going on. Same with Barack, this alien invasion at the border. It's exactly what it is. Migrants hopping trains, coming by boat, by plane. So what do? Well, Congress is doing nothing. Do we stop paying taxes to stop funding it? I mean, what's our play here? Is there one, Barack?
Well, the only play that is there is to actually enforce the border, to go back to the Trump policies, to make sure we have a stay in Mexico policy, to make sure that there's a border wall, to fund the agents. If there's anything that the government needs to fund, it's the security of the country itself. That is the last bastion of security. It's our Alamo, as it were. We need to keep this country safe. And by letting this flood of immigrants in, we are really dooming ourselves There's nothing more important than that. And yet they treat it as if it's just some sort of luxury to have agents at the border. It is not. It is essential for our very sovereignty.
And I love all of the conversation from Democrats. No, the border is secure, Ari. The border is secure, right? Gun owners with the swift and devastating takedown, though, of New Mexico's attempted gun grab. I thought this was really interesting to watch. You guys know the story. The governor outlawing the legal carry for a month to stop gun violence, please, as though that's going to do anything. So lawsuits were filed in like a hot second. In less than a week, Michelle Grisham's attack on the Second Amendment was over. Like, we need to pay attention. We need to look at the gun lobby and figure out what they're doing, because they're no joke.
Well, they told us you don't need guns because you have the police, and then they defunded the police. And now in Washington state, they're actually rolling back the restrictions on sex offenders and releasing them into communities without informing the communities. And they say your protection's up to you after just passing another quote unquote assault weapons ban. So I ask, if they want us to protect ourselves and then they're taking away the very things we need to protect ourselves, leaving the border wide open, releasing prolific offenders in every blue city in America, not prosecuting other ones, then of course I'm going to make sure I have more guns than they do.
Exactly right. I always wonder, Ari, and I don't know how you guys feel about this. Is there a fiscal penalty we can inflict as taxpayers, like legitimately on our bloated government and people who think it's okay to send $6.2 billion more to Ukraine? Ari, hop in on that.
Well, what I would say is I would love to say, hey, let's do a tax revolt. Let's start throwing, I don't know, baskets of EVs into the ocean or something like that. That would be great, but it's not really practical, and the government's going to come arrest Ari Hoffman if he doesn't pay his taxes. But what we really need to happen is if you're having a whole bunch of elected officials enter office on some kind of Tea Party wave, you got to say, we elected you, we expect you to be accountable, otherwise we're getting rid of you. And Republicans need to start primarying Republicans who don't do their jobs. I mean, let's not forget, when Donald Trump was first in office, we had the House and the Senate, and a lot of things didn't get done. There were a lot of empty promises, and I'm worried about that heading into 2024 about any Republican who's running for office.
Right, and Stacy, same question to you. What do you say? Is there a way to push back in a reasonable, concerted way, or are we just so haphazardly not paying attention?
Well, I think a lot of Americans are paying attention because you have no choice when the cost of energy is up 68%, the cost of going to the grocery store is up 48%. When you're looking at the crime being up, depending on what major city you live in or near, it's up, sometimes by orders of magnitude more than it was during the Trump years. And so you can't help but pay attention when government is this bad, this insidious, and this in your face. So the idea here is, as Ari said, you primary those who are not doing their jobs. Anyone who is America last, like some of those candidates who were on earlier this week during the GOP debate, really showing themselves to be people who prioritize Ukrainians and any other nationality before Americans. You primary those individuals. You don't vote for them. You reach out to them via email. You may even protest at their office. It's time for everybody to get real. They're not listening, but they will if we make them.
Right. All right, Barack, don't go anywhere because you're in the hot seat first when we come back.